all talked with each other a lot lately, so I think we all know one another pretty well. But anyway, what I'd like to talk with you about today is some work that I have been doing with a research group, which consists of Jeremy Brewitt and Karen Burstein and myself. And we've done a series of studies that have looked at ebook reading in the classroom. We know some about how ebooks impact reading and learning to read, but not so much about how they impact teaching children to read. That is their role in reading instruction at school. And I'm really glad to be following Beth on this because she really set the stage for much of this. What does teaching with ebooks look like in early childhood classrooms? What are the approaches and techniques that realize the magic of ebooks? Put differently, how do we harness the electronic energy of ebooks into the wider goal of teaching all children to read? Our research group started with a 4-part model of ebook pedagogy that reflects what we know already about quality early literacy instruction in general. Good books, a supportive physical environment, engaging activity, and explicit instruction. We refer to them as eBooks, place, engagement, and instruction. And we began to consider these components anew. We started looking at them through a theory of affordances, originally proposed by J.J. Gibson. Some of us may be familiar with that. Namely, that what the environment can do for you must be seen or perceived by you if its contribution is to be realized in meaningful action. Affordances of things, in short, interact with abilities of persons to support activity. Specific to ebooks as objects, the basic idea is this: that the affordances of electronic books, the screen interfaces, must be retrievable, interpretable, and discoverable by its users, their abilities to support interactions that are relevant to reading. Our research circulates around this core theory. We want to learn about how the affordances of ebooks are realized by users in the instructional setting, how they help make teachers and kids smart or smarter about reading. Now, our journey of inquiry so far consists of several field-based studies on that 4-part model, conducted in what I call in the wild, of real, everyday, early childhood classrooms, mainly Head Start classrooms, which, as we know from experience, can be unpredictable places. We started by examining the ebook as a new material resource for instruction. We created an ebook quality rating tool that described across-the-counter ebooks and applied it to a representative collection. This graphic summarizes a big, major chunk of what we learned. A, that we have lots of ebooks with less interactivity, screen interfaces, and B, fewer with more interactivity, although we know that is rapidly changing just from being here these last 2 days. More with less, less with more. Not all ebooks in some are alike as to their affordances. For example, supporting digital reading skills. And this has big implications for instruction, not to mention teacher education. which ebooks, at which time, with which kids, is a question that we have not yet been able to address very well. We next explored, I need your help, Jeremy, because I need to move this up and down. Help, Jeremy!
I'm always a tech guy.
You're always the tech guy. There we go. We next explored the ebook as a new device for reading in the classroom, observing the logistics of location, operation, acoustics, appeal, and safety. We envisioned a supportive, pleasing physical environment that ensured access and mobility with traditional storybook reading. It turned out to be harder than we thought. Practicalities of the physical environment often trumped principles of classroom design. Lack of power outlets, lack of space, lack of storage, lack of this and lack of that were terribly limiting factors. Following a modest engineering of the environment, of the classroom space, based on our design principles, some of the physical environments that we worked with turned out to be pretty good. Some were okay, and some were just a mess. So we need considerable research yet on evidence-based guidelines on how to easily create ebook-friendly environments in classrooms of all shapes and sizes that encourage ebook reading and support instruction. And, dare I say, that look inviting and are beautiful. Engagement is the start point of perceiving the affordances of ebooks that contribute to literacy experience, development, and skills. Our group conducted 2 studies of children's engagement with ebooks on different devices. The tabletop touchscreen computer, the iPad, and the iPod. And the first study that we did helped us to do 2 things. We developed a typology for observing children's engagement, and secondly, we gathered some preliminary evidence about children's engagement behaviors in settings commonly used for reading in the preschool. Among other interesting observations, we found that children's listen, look, and touch behaviors increased as they gained control of devices, and their moving and gesturing behaviors decreased. Teacher-led reading limited some engagement behaviors. We might predict that. And certain child-led behaviors recruited more of their engagement behaviors. Also, we noted that children with higher levels of behavioral regulation engaged faster than their peers with lower levels. In other words, kids who had more self-regulation engaged more quickly. They beat their less regulated peers to the punch by about 8 to 10 seconds. We don't quite know what that 8 to 10 seconds actually means, but it is 8 to 10 seconds. Except with the smallest devices, the iPod, where the less regulated kids engaged more quickly. We were intrigued by this. So we conducted a secondary analysis on the data set, which I will not go into because it consisted of tons of video data. Here we more closely observed the role of device, the tabletop touchscreen computer, the iPad and the iPod, on attentional capture. Devices we saw differentially afford the critical multisensory behaviors of look, touch, gesture, and movement, which capture attention that initiates engagement. Smaller devices afford more of these behaviors than larger devices. listening did not appear to be impacted by device type. But then, we might expect that, right? We've been trying to get kids to listen in all manner of ways, and we have not found a superior one yet. Theoretically, though, we propose that touching in combination with looking and listening is key to engagement in early childhood ebook reading. We call it the sweet spot, touching, looking, listening. Also, on a practical level from the secondary analysis, we also improve the typology that we have for future research purposes. But now to the heart of the matter. Teaching with ebooks. After no small amount of coaxing, we convinced several Head Start teachers to substitute ebooks for print books in their shared book routine. You know, the good old get on the run shared book routine, although we did it with small groups. And we observed what happened for about 8 weeks, keeping a close eye on children's learning of target vocabulary words as a marker variable of effective instruction. Thankfully, the children learn on average of one new target word per week based on pre and post test data. So, no harm done there. A few descriptive observations about the teachers teaching. The good news is that they readily applied their known shared book teaching practices to the ebook reading environment. And the bad news is that they readily applied it. In other words, in applying the known with print books to the new with ebooks, powerful affordances of the ebooks were missed. They were not perceived by the teachers and thus not realized in instruction. One prime example was the lack of attention to hotspots as sources of word meaning that children can be taught to use on their own in reading. And this is unfortunate in a digital age. So we need much more research to better understand the affordance, ability, interaction between ebooks and teachers to identify new best practices for early reading instruction and teach them to teachers. What's our takeaway so far from researching our 4-part model? Book, place, engagement, instruction. And researching our 4-part model in the wild. Each technology for teaching reading has its pedagogy. Or I might say it this way, each pedagogy has its technology. The Hornbook of the medieval ages called for teaching techniques that emphasize pronouncing words correctly and clearly. Lots of drill going on there. The Basel reader system, little Dick and Jane, McGuffey, led to a host of oral and silent reading teaching techniques. And they were all combined into the directed reading lesson with its multiple steps and its multiple sets of materials and its multiple workbooks and its multiple dittos. Then, the Big Book introduced the idea of shared book reading, summed up in read to, read with me, you try. And we've surrounded that with lots of other activities for innovating on text. Today and tomorrow, we have ebooks. And the pedagogy of this technology where reading and learning to read is just emerging. So, heads up, move over, this is wishy-washy, make room for shared book reading 3.0.